Hello, everyone. This is Jennifer Hillman, and we are here with Bob Yehling, who has just shared even more exciting news. We get to have a quick visit with Martha, his beloved, who has just gotten a wonderful award, and we will talk to Martha later. But right now we're talking to Robert Yehling, who has finished and completed his book, Voices, which has been a dream and a project of his within his heart. So it's a wonderful, incredible project and book. And I'm so happy to have Robert on. He has always been an inspiration and just a wonderful guy to know. So Bob, thank you again for coming back on air.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, for having me. It's always a delight.
And with this, why don't you give us an idea of what Voices is about, or the process it took to produce this wonderful book?
Yeah, this book, I always like to tell my friends it's the rock and roll novel I always wanted to write. It's been a very long time coming, and that's just because I kept putting it away, getting busy with other things and so forth. So really the genesis of the book was 15 years ago when I was at the Haight Street Fair in San Francisco, and I was walking down Haight Street with Marty Ballin from Jefferson Airplane and Jefferson Starship, and we were working on his memoirs at the time. And during our walk, there were 50,000 people, and everybody's running up to him and saying hi. But despite that, while we were walking to the stage where they were going to perform, I just bounced this idea off him of, my rock and roll novel idea. And we bounced it back and forth during that walk. So essentially all these years later, the major storyline is pretty much the same as what we came up with that day. I mean, there's been some twists and turns and changes, but that's how it began. So I've spent the last 15 years, I've written 5 or 6 different drafts of it. And and it finally came together, and since this is the 50th anniversary of the Summer of Love, and the characters in the book got their musical start during the Summer of Love, it was obviously the time to bring it out.
And it really is. I love how things just unfold so naturally. It's like, this is a perfect book for this summer.
Yeah.
To read and to really reminisce and really embrace the power and the impact of the Summer of Love.
Yeah.
It's an amazing, and here we are talking, and then I'm thinking of Greg Allman, who just recently passed, and I'm thinking all these amazing artists are like leaving us, and I'm going, wait a minute, not yet.
Not yet, right? I know it's been it's been a very tough last 18 months or so for all of us who grew up, listening to the music of, Prince, David Bowie, Greg Allman. I mean, it's been tough. But that's part of life. It's transition time for some of them.
Yeah, and I mean the amount of music and amount of product that they've given us, and so much inspiration and love, and just really great times. And that's something that I think this book really reflects, is the fact that when one of the lead characters, Tom, is doing this final performance, the love from the audience is never ending.
Yeah, and that's something that is very true for all of these older bands, these legacy bands to this day. Like I'm actually going back up to the Haight Street Fair in 2 weeks because they're doing the 50th anniversary celebration at the Haight Street Fair. So a lot of these musicians are going to be there playing. But I'm going up with Voices, and that's a really good point. There's, we've had a 50-year love affair, as it were, with some of these bands, and we are the first generation that has, has had such a long-standing relationship with our music, especially with rock music. And what I think is really fascinating is these bands, when they formed in the 60s, they thought, it'd be really cool to play some music for, 1, 2, 3 years, and then that was it. And then in the case of bands like the Dead and the Rolling Stones and some of the other bands, Santana, that, you know, and Santana especially, because they came out of the Summer of Love.
Right.
They just keep playing, you know. So we've kept buying their records, we've kept going to their concerts. They interact really well with audiences, and this is what happens. 50 years later, we're still celebrating the music and the bands.
And even with Bob Dylan, he's
Yes.
you know, getting major prizes of saying thank you for all the inspirations within your lyrics and really motivating entire generations. I was born in the 60s, and yet I literally grew up with all these people's music, and they just, certain songs, I just like, different songs just have such memories. And I don't think that really a genre, rock, has had such an impact. I mean, everybody says that about their music, but this just keeps growing and growing. And even the artists today really have their roots in people from the 60s.
That's absolutely right. In fact, last year when I was working on a project up in Denver, one of my colleagues took me, you know, to 3 different, they're called alt psychedelic shows.
Mm-hmm.
So it's alternative music, psychedelic themed. And these were all bands of people in their 20s, and they were dressed retro, and they were playing psychedelic rock music. And that alone goes to show how impactful the music of the 60s and early 70s was, because what's happening now, and I notice this because I'm a high school cross country coach, so I see it on campus of the school at Carlsbad High School where I coach. But these kids, the kids that are a little bit more maybe thoughtful or a little bit more appreciative of good music, they just bypass a lot of the pop that's being played now, and they go right, and they always go back to the 60s and 70s. So
Right.
So 2 of the, and this will surprise a lot of people, but 2 of the top bands among high school students right now are the Beatles and Led Zeppelin. You know, and it just,
Yeah.
so
They're timeless, though. Their music is timeless.
And these musicians in the 60s, you know, the other thing too is they grew up with not a lot of TV, so
Right.
they read all the time. All of them are classically trained musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like today where you just pick up a guitar and start playing out and whip out a pop song or whatever. It's not that easy, but by comparison. But they're classically trained, so they know their way around any type of music to start with. And that's another reason why the music is so rich. And then thanks to Bob Dylan, thanks to him, the 60s exploded with great lyricists. So these are really well storied songs, as well as being, you know, great melodies.
Right. And speaking of the lyrics, within your book, you do speak some of the lyrics of the pretend band that are actually very reminiscent of the 60s, and they're great, timeless lyrics that I hope you put them together in a book.
Thank you. I ended up writing 20 songs each in Tom Timerow. He's one of the protagonists in his persona. And then I wrote 20 in Christine Timerow's persona. And the reason why I did that, quite simply, is I wanted to use some lyrics from bands in the 60s, but rights and permissions are really difficult to come by and expensive. And I thought, well, I've written a lot of poetry, I've written songs, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, this is all part of the writing process. So I ended up writing these songs. And now we're getting ready to start producing the audiobook right now. And I have a friend locally who has a band, and they're right now adapting 3 or 4 of the songs to music. So that audiobook will actually have music in it that kind of emulates the Fever, which is the band in my book.
Yeah. So let's go back to the summary of the book. And how would you best explain what the book's about and the storyline, and just a little bit more about?
Sure. I like to describe it as a father-daughter, lost daughter relationship story set against the last 50 years of American rock and roll and pop music. It's about a rock music legend who got his start in the Summer of Love with a couple of his bandmates. They became one of the biggest bands in the world during their heyday. Then they got off the road. They retired for 20 years, and then due to downloading and streaming and so forth, kids and older listeners, their music got popular again, really popular. So they were persuaded by their manager to go back on tour. And so as the tour is forming with these older bands, a lot of times band members have died. Some are too sick to go out on the road because it's a grueling thing. And others just simply retired and stayed retired. So these bands always have younger band members in them. So he had lost his backup singer, Tom Timrow had lost his backup singer, so he hires his daughter Christine to sing with him because she's got a good voice. And so part of the story, and they had some difficulties in the past because of a family secret that he had a lost daughter. So she had an older sister she never knew about. The lost daughter was spirited away to Italy when she was about 5 and then presumed dead. So Tom and Christine, she comes in and they actually heal their relationship through him helping her become a star, which she becomes during the tour that ensues with the fever. And then, without giving too much of the book away, some interesting things happen involving the older lost daughter, who was born during the 60s in San Francisco. So that's the crux of the story. Really, it's really a family relationship story. But then I put this band on the road, and we sweep through all sorts of little scenes and highlights and experiences that stitch together some of the best of the things that have happened in the last 50 years.
So what was the process, since you are doing so many other projects at the same time? You just amaze me with all the things that you accomplished, really. You're an inspiration in that sense.
Thank you.
So was it like you would do something and say, oh, I got an idea for the book, and just write it down? Or what was the process in getting this book completed?
Well, I mean, this is just hard to say because I'm usually a fast writer, and I've written 20 books in the last 12 years. But my first draft I did in 2004, and then I had to take the whole subplot out because part of it at that time was political, and election was 2004. So that
right.
So basically what happened is I kept revising and putting it away, waiting a year, revising it again. And what happens when you do that, and I tell everyone I teach in writers' workshops not to do this, is in a year's time, we become better writers. We're different people. We see the world differently. We have different perspectives on music and so forth. We're a year older and presumably a year wiser. And so the book changes before our eyes because we've changed. And that is why it is so important to just, do your rewrites, do your edits, finish the book and turn it in and move on. Well, I didn't do that. So finally last year I got it out again, and I just said, you know what, 2017 is right around the corner, and it's either now or never, because there's nothing else really to tie a Summer of Love book to after the 50th anniversary, right?
Exactly.
So that was the process, and then I really worked hard on it last year and got it done.
And is it like a sense of relief? Like, here's my baby finally here. I mean, it's got to be compared to other books and your other projects, was a little bit more happiness and excitement that this was done versus some of the other ones?
Yeah, well, a lot of relief for starters, because I finally got it out of my computer, right, and into print. But I think that I'm really happy with all the books that I complete. That's for sure. But this one's a little bit different, just because this is really my baby. I mean, the only other thing I could possibly write about that would impassion me as much as music is running and fitness. And so it was very, very, it's a very, very personal, feeling on this one. And I'm happy, I'm relieved, and I'm really excited to be taking it up to San Francisco in 2 weeks, because the response up there has been tremendous already. And
Awesome.
so, yeah, and it's like the perfect book to be there on that, for the Haight Street Fair on June 11th. So that's going to be really neat. I mean, that's just going to be fun. And that's when it's going to feel like, because it's bringing the book to completion, because
Yeah.
it's the idea started on Haight Street when I was hanging out with Marty. So now we're bringing it back there, and it should, that's going to be a fun day.
It sounds like it's going to be an amazing day.
Yeah.
So with this project being done, what other advice do you have for writers on getting through that long process, or the realization that some things are going to change along the way, or have some flexibility with your storyline?
Yeah, I think in my case, what happened was, I co-write books with people. I write, and I've done a lot of topical books and stuff. What happened in this case, it was really weird, because I've no trouble sending and hitting send and getting published and all of that. I mean, I'm very good at that. But with this particular book, it was just like I just wasn't hitting send. And so my advice is what I said a few minutes ago. When you write a book, take it through to completion, and if you put it away, only put it away for 2 or 3 weeks to give yourself a chance to step back a little bit, and then look at it, and then you can do your polish at it and send. I don't recommend what I did to anybody, because that's a book. That's how novels take forever, and so, yeah, it's really important once you start a book, once you finish the draft, to then stay on it until the edits are done and rewrites are done, and you take it to completion, so that you don't get caught in that thing where it all looks so different a year later.
Right. And like you said before, you really do grow, even in a couple months. And I find it very healing to get this stuff out of your system.
Yeah.
And with your writing, because I've taken your class, I know that the characters you suggest have a little bit of essence of you, the writer, in each one.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's something I teach. It's a little bit unusual, but people that have utilized it love it. And what I teach is that, let's say you have 6 main characters in a book, to implant one of your own personality or characteristics or your passions in each of the 6, just one. And it doesn't make people think, oh, that's Jennifer, oh, that's Bob. But what it does for me as the writer is it forms an immediate emotional connection with this character that I'm creating out of thin air. And by doing so, it enables us to write closer to the character within the character a lot more easily, because if we have one strand that connects us to our character, then it just makes it easier to open up the character and imagine them and how they talk and so forth. So yeah, so in voices, every one of those characters has one piece of me in them, and there's a lot of other little personal experiences that I put in there. Like, some of the stories actually happen because I just realized there's nothing I can make up that could possibly be more outrageous or more amazing or more fantastic than this story that I was there to see or experience. And so I just fictionalized those within the characters so that they're part of a novel and not just a true story.
Right. Now, the other thing, as you were saying that, I'm thinking of the spiritual aspect of, in each person you meet, they have a reflection of you. So the characters are just reflecting you, but in a sense, you're showing a part of you, and that's where the lessons, and that's how the oneness really involves in the fact that we are a reflection of each other, and to show that part that you recognize and celebrate it in words, it's just beautiful.
Thank you. Well, leave it to you to figure out the deeper thing that I was doing. That's exactly what I was doing. We're all a part of each other. We're all a reflection of each other. And a way to do that in fiction writing is to literally take a piece of yourself and embody it in a character, because then the readers feel that same reflection.
Right.
The other thing that I did is, if you notice, even these, like Tom Timmerow would be the equivalent of Robert Plant, basically, as far as stature. And I made them normal. I just gave them normal characteristics and just being regular people. And I did some other things that are little, some of my music writing friends were saying, that's a little unusual, but I didn't want a rock and roll novel that was full of gratuitous sex and just, drop F-bombs every third word, which can be the case with some rock musicians and some bands. I wanted something that expressed the deeper connections within music and just the depths of these characters as musicians and how they create their music. And I do have a few love scenes in the book, of course, because I'm trying to be realistic, but I feel it's done tastefully and artfully enough. And and I kept the cussing down. There's slight profanity in the book, but everybody uses it once in a while, and that was my approach. But the biggest thing, like you realized, obviously, is I was touting that we're all connected.
The fact that in this book that also shows through is the deep passion you have for music, the deep appreciation for music. And I think that is something that really livens or empowers this book, is because this is something from your heart. It's very genuine and sincere. This is something that is really a part of your soul. This is something you are meant to do.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, well, I'm a huge, no surprise, I'm a huge music fan, and I have been forever. But one of the first things when I was 16, I was hired by a daily newspaper as a sports writer. But one of the first things the editor did when he realized I loved music so much is he sent me down to do concert reviews, and then he let me help him with some album reviews. And so when I was 17, I was backstage interviewing. Well, basically, these guys are all now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but in the 70s, young and playing. So I started out really young, I just think it's music is a universal language. It's also a great healer. Quick example of that, Marty Ballin told me, and I fictionalized it and put it in the book. Marty Ballin, I asked him one day, you've been playing for 40 years, performing for 40 years. How do you keep it fresh? How do you not just go out on stage and go on autopilot? How do you keep it fresh? And he goes, doesn't matter how many people are in the audience. I look for one person in the crowd that's hurting, and I sing to them.
Awesome.
That to me is the power and the beauty of music, and that was what I was trying to convey through my book.
Yes.
That it has music has the power to heal anything, and music is just it's incredibly enjoyable, meaningful, and there's a line in my book where if you wrap a memory around a song, it stays with you forever, and it really does.
And it really, really does.
Yeah.
And it's music has gotten me out of some dark times. It's just amazing. Like all of a sudden a song will pop on and boom, it's like, okay, I'm okay.
Yeah, the song can be cathartic too. I mean, it could be, you could be I could be in a particular funk or a mood or just, something not going right. And then the song speaks, it always happens this way. It just pops up and the song speaks directly to what I'm going through. So,
Right.
so it starts off as, man, I don't need to hear more of this really. But then you get past the bridge of the song and into the last part of the song, and then then the redemption or the positive step out or the light or whatever comes in, and
Right.
all like, whoa, there you go, and then you feel the catharsis, and then everything's good again.
And then there's always those times you're listening to the radio and you go, oh, not that song. And then you change the channel and the same song's on. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm supposed to listen to this one.
that's why streamed music is awesome. There's so many different choices.
The divine really uses it quite often.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're going up to San Francisco and doing some promotional. Let's get back into the promotional process.
Sure.
You've done a lot of group book signings. And is that a great way of doing it these days because of the way laws and other things are coming into play when it comes to selling books, which is another question. But what do you suggest for people to really get their audience built?
Yeah, I've become a firm believer in group book signings. I used to not do them or really care for them because, all of us as authors, we want to be center stage at our own book signing. And there are times, there's those that happens, especially when you get signed by a publisher and you go on your book tour and so forth.
Right.
But the more realistic way for authors, since publishers are doing less and less and less in general to help us out, is to collaborate with 2 or 3 other authors, and then start calling bookstores and places where you can have signings. And it does 2 things. It does several things. Well, one thing it does is the bookstore receives that call and they go, oh my God, 4 authors, these are nice titles. And so that's 4 different audiences, 4 different crowds, 4 different email lists, 4 different social media platforms. We do our bookstore promotion and we bring all 4 and we got all these people coming in. That's how they look at it. The way I look at it is, especially for self-published authors and those who are independently published, and that's how you get into the big stores like Barnes and Noble or things like that. They'll buy your books, in a group signing situation like that. The other part of it is authors, we're in a world now where it's vital, I feel, for authors to help other authors. I think it's long past time to get off this kind of an attitude that was roaming around publishing for authors for years, where I wrote my book about music. I'm not going to help you with your book about music because you're taking away something from me. Well, that's not true. What the better way to do it is like music writer, 2 music writers, book promotion, lots more people come. And it's just the way we need to do it. And you'd asked also about the laws. And I'm not sure how it is in other states, but in California, they've gotten really strict about writers selling in public places. Basically, we need the same type of a reseller's permit as a retail store has. They do issue them like short term. So if you're going on a 1-month book tour, you can get a seller's permit for a month. So if you're selling at book fairs, at festivals, at any sort of event in which a retailer, bookstore, or other retailer is not buying your books, then the author, have to have a reseller's permit. And in California, that's done through the Board of Equalization. The reason why in California it was done, and I believe it's an overextension by the governor's office, but that's just my opinion, is sports memorabilia and comic book collectors were going to these shows, and they were, they were selling their wares for outrageous amounts of money and then not reporting them. So that law went into effect to start off for them, and then the governor's office decided to make it apply to anybody who sells anything. So even kids with lemonade stands technically have to have a seller's permit. So it's over. It's just too much. It's gone too far. But as far as authors are concerned, the reality is that we have to have one, and it's not that hard to get. I'm not sure how it is in other states, but in California, you pay state taxes here, and you give them your social, they check that out, then they give you the permit. So it's really easy, but it's just a hassle. and you have to have it on your person because you never know when, in our state, where Board of Equalization people are roaming around events.
And it happens. I was
Sure.
working, and you know, I've had a resale license for a long time because just as a corporation that I'm under, you just need to have it. So,
Sure.
and with the broadband, it's just not books. I can pretty much sell anything, which is kind of nice. And then when the gym show comes, I get a discount.
All right.
Anyway, back to promotions. The other thing that we have talked about in the past is doing oh, she can come on. Come on, Martha. Come on.
Come on.
And here is our surprise guest.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi. Okay.
She can actually come on the camera view if I would like to get her ideas on promotion as well.
Let's see if I can fit in here.
Good to see you.
Good morning. Nice to see you too.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Very excited.
Yes. Now, do you think the fact that you did so much promotion for your book before it was even written and during the process and getting it after, do you think that helps with getting awards because it's out there more often?
I'm not sure if it may. I haven't really thought about it. I think that that's something that any author needs to do beforehand.
Right.
I didn't quite, this being my first book, I didn't quite understand that, and I don't think I put as much energy or effort into it as I should have, because really you need to promote your book prior to it getting out.
Yeah, you did that. You were on my show promoting it. You did some pre-promotion.
Pre-promotion. I just think that it's just a fabulous book, so that's why it's won the award.
Well, again, with Bob, there is a passion within your book, and it shows through. I mean, it's such a wonderful, wonderful story and well written.
Well, you know, the other thing too about her book is it's taken on a life of its own and a different journey than a typical book written by a U.S. author does. It debuted in Germany at the Frankfurt Book Fair a year and a half ago. So it actually was published first in German. And then since that time, the publisher, who also licenses throughout Europe, has, you know, it's in Slovakian now, and it's going to be in several other languages.
Actually, it's in Slovakian and also the Czech Republic, so I'm not sure what language they speak. Okay,
yeah, just Czech.
So they speak Czech. So, and she sort of branded it where all of the books that she's doing in German, Czech Republic, and Slovakia, and then I've signed over quite a few other countries to her, that she's changing the title just a little bit, but it has one feather on it, on the design. So she's doing that across the board. It's all the same color scheme, and it will have the same similar thing. And I mimicked that when I did, because I actually got to produce and put together my cover for my book here in the US. And I didn't know that she was going to be doing that she was going to be branding it. So I only had the one book, the German book, to go from. So I sort of mimicked it by putting a feather at the bottom and then the sky at the top of the US cover. But I wish I would have known that she was going to be doing that, because I may have done the same thing here, but who knows? But it's really exciting for me that people in Europe are so receptive to it. I think that
why was that a choice to do it in Germany first, or was that just the published choice? I'm just wondering how that happened.
Well, I actually had a publisher here in the United States that was going to do the book. And then it turned out that there was another book written in the United States by someone with a high profile. And it turned out that they hadn't actually died.
Oh.
So it put a negative spin, and the publisher didn't want to do the book. He basically killed it here in the United States. So we kept searching, and Bob had a connection in Germany, and I spoke with her. She read the book. She absolutely loved it. The name of the company is Sarisa, which means smile, and it's 5 women, and it's all about empowering. Their thought is the books that they carry need to have a positive thought. And they loved it. And in Europe, I guess angels are very readily accepted.
Very
So,
much so.
right. So I had the thrill of debuting in Germany, which was incredible experience.
It sounds fantastic. And again, the book, the story, the book, everything about it, and you are just miraculous. I mean, it's just such a pleasure to have you on again and to see your beautiful face.
Thank you. Thank you.
So with that, I'm going to ask you and Bob to let people know how they can get in touch with you and where they can find your books.
The books are on Amazon and in bookstores, and where else are they, Bob?
On other online booksellers. So both the books are available on all online booksellers, including Amazon, through bookstores, and then we do, for people that want direct signed copies, directly from us, we handle that as well.
Okay, what's your websites?
My website is www.wordjourneysliterary.com.
Okay.
Okay.
And Martha?
No, I don't have a website.
But you're on Facebook, correct?
I am completely on Facebook, and you can look for me on Facebook under Martha Halda. Martha Halda will find me, Halda. Or I actually have an email called A Taste of Eternity. And that's sort of a blog situation that I do for the book specifically.
And then they can also order her book directly from the publisher, Open Books Press.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thank you both very much. And Bob, you and I can discuss so much about publishing and books and music. It could go on for like 3 hours probably. So we will do this again, and we'll do it soon. Again, Martha, congratulations on your award. And
Thank you.
Bob, all the best with your book. I'm sure it's going to be winning some awards as well.
Thank you very much, Jennifer.
You have a great day.
You too. And with that, this is Jennifer Hillman saying, with each breath of air, please gain some inspiration, and enjoy yourself. Many blessings to you. Take care.